this first one's not only going to be wide receivers, but it's going to be a little bit of MVP talk. Now,
we talk
Hill.
about Tyreek Hill? Yeah.
Yep.
My guy.
So through week 13, Hill now has 93 catches for 1,481 receiving yards. Now, it's 13. That's through week 13. There's guys in the season, most guys in the season are not going to even sniff 1,400 receiving yards. 12 touchdowns. Final two total, so those 1,400 receiving yards and the 12 touchdowns lead the NFL currently. He's averaging 120 yards per game at this point, which puts him on pace to eclipse the NFL record of 1,964 yards by Mr. Megatron himself in 2012. And he is on pace to break 2,000 yards, which was predicted very early on in the season by my dad, right? So he put it out there. I think Hill's going to break 2K. I was wrong in that situation. I said I just don't think it's really likely because we haven't seen it. Cooper Kupp was on pace for that.
Expert Dallas Taylor. Noted NFL
expert. Right. And if we talk about MVP talk, Josh Allen isn't in the race, right? Too many turnovers, too many team losses. Patrick Mahomes, you could argue for, but I just don't. He's almost there as a namesake right now, as well as I love Patrick Mahomes and I love the legacy and I love what he's doing. I just don't think it's his year right now. And plus, I think we have some voter fatigue on that one. Jalen Hurts is close, right? You already talked about the MVP odds. He's second right now in MVP odds. And then cases can be made for guys like obviously Purdy, who's going to be that number one in odds. Dak and Lamar are chasing as well. I think it's a weird year for quarterbacks.
There's another position out there you didn't mention either. You got to throw some love at CMC.
Yeah, and that's another thing I was going to say is when it comes to the MVP on the offensive side of the ball, it's quarterbacks and running backs. When it's not a quarterback, it's a running back. So the MVP award really is the quarterback award. And with this, and the last time it was won by a running back was when? When was it? You remember?
Did Adrian Peterson get one?
Yep, 2012, Adrian Peterson.
What do you have, 2,000 rushing yards?
Yep, and so he got real close to breaking the single season record. That's when he was coming off his ACL injury. So big story there, along with the 2,000 rushing yards as well. So he goes story and yards on that one.
Also note the QB there. I think that was Christian Ponder. So
yeah,
absolutely nothing to speak of at quarterback.
Yep, and so. It's never been done by a wide receiver. It's a weird year for quarterbacks. There's not usually at this point in the season, we kind of see like a clear cut, like, hey, unless something happens to this guy, he's going to win the MVP this year. I think it's usually clear cut at this point. It's changing week to week, right? It could be Dak by the end of the season, depending on how he closes out. It could be Purdy. It could be Lamar Jackson. It could be Jalen Hurts. CMC could have an absolutely insane last couple of weeks, and all of a sudden he throws his name in the hat to go a lot higher than where it's at right now. But we got to look at 93 catches, 1,400 receiving yards. My opinion, just in terms of maybe it's the voter fatigue off the quarterbacks, he eclipses that 2,000 yards. You got to hand it to him. They're still Offensive Player of the Year if you want to go hand it to Brock Purdy, which is still a great story. Regardless of what Brock wins, MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, a Super Bowl, whatever it is, at this point right now, Brock Purdy is a success story. You brought it up earlier in the week. Is Brock Purdy is it one of the best success stories or America's favorite story? I think sometimes we forget. Obviously, Tom Brady being drafted in the 7th as well. Not last pick, but in the 7th. I just think that Tom Brady turned into the super villain of the league because of how dominant he was. And it wouldn't be surprising, Brock might be the favorite right now, but if he turns into the super villain of the league, it's not going to be the favorite after that. So I think we got to give Tyreek Hill his flowers. If he hits that 2K, you got to give it to him. As much as I would love Dak to get an MVP. Now I have kind of a push and pull on that one. As much as I would love him to get an MVP or Brock just for there it is. So as much as I'd love to see Brock get it for the story or Lamar just for the legacy, I don't want to see Jalen Hurts get it because fuck the Eagles every day of the week, ending in days that ended with Y. So I would love to see someone else get it. Hill, Dak, Lamar, Purdy, but Tyreek Hill is the one I really want that push for.
I will go to the NFL officers today. I'll fly out there. I will grab the Offensive Player of the Year award. I will take Tyreek Hill's name and I will engrave it myself. Tyreek Hill is your 2023 NFL Offensive Player of the Year. Not going to win the MVP. Now, if you took all these players off of their team, by far, Tyreek Hill is the most important player to his team. Because I love Mike McDaniels. That is my dog, and we know that. I think, with the Shanahan, and when I say Shanahan, I mean Mike. The Mike Shanahan tree is everywhere. It's one of the most successful outside of probably Holmgren, who has been incredible as well. His tree. The Dolphins ain't doing nothing if Tyreek Hill's not on that team. So does he deserve the most valuable player on his team? Yes. Is he going to win? No. Spoiler alert. At the end of the year, whoever has that number one seed in the NFC, that's who wins the MVP. Because the schedules are hard. The schedules are tough. The schedules are hard. If Dak goes through and the Bills and I had this all memorized, the Lions, correct? And he wins all those games, he's the MVP. Now, I believe, I don't mean to pick you off, I think Dak's going to turn into a pumpkin, and the Cowboys are going to go 2-2 over this stretch. That's my belief. I think that Jalen Hurts and the Eagles are better than what they showed on Sunday, and I think they're probably going to win out pretty strong, and they're going to take that number one seed. And my prediction for right now would be that Jalen Hurts gets the MVP. But if the 49ers are sitting there and they have won out the season and they went on a 3-game losing streak and they finished at 14-3, I think that the NFL, looking at Brock Purdy, looking at Mr. Irrelevant, looking at the story, the torn ligament in last year's playoffs, the rise to success this year, I think it writes itself, obviously. I mean, I think just based off of this podcast, Hallmark's going to hire me to write their stories because that's the only place that the story takes place is Hallmark. So I think if the Cowboys run through and get a 3-1 or 4-0 run through this, I think Jalen Hurts wins the division. It's Jalen, and if the 49ers take the division. All that being said, if the Cowboys drop some games, the Eagles drop some games, the 49ers drop some games, and the Ravens take the number one seed, then it goes to Lamar. It's the quarterback award. There's no doubt about it. And I think if Christian McCaffrey broke the NFL record for touchdowns and had 2,000 all-purpose yards, then you'd have a huge argument for him. But unless Tyreek breaks the record substantially, I just don't see it. That Tyreek has said that when he retires from the NFL, he wants to be a porn star. He said some wild things, and the NFL doesn't want to crown their MVP and have them Google Tyreek Hill, and that's the first thing that pops up on a Google search when you got little Timmy at home, 12 years old, wanting to learn more about Tyreek Hill. It's just not what they want. And when as a player, you have to think about that. You have to think about your reputation and what happens when they. How many times has Dak Prescott been the man of the year? Like, Dak Prescott is the shining face of the NFL. And I think, honestly, the thing with Dak, what they're going to be held against him is his performance in other seasons. He's been the touted king of the second tier. Jimmy, Kirk, Derek Carr, Dak. He's the king of that, but he's not in level one. The first year he's done it, I don't know if they're going to reward that. But if you guys go 3-1, 4-0 through this stretch and take the number one seed, how can you not? If Brock Purdy doesn't exist, Dak Prescott's number one in every statistic out there, NFL-wise. So,
yeah. And I think that when it comes to success over the next couple of games, success in the playoffs for the Cowboys, it comes down to, obviously, Dak. Going back to coaching, you gotta let him throw the ball, dude. I've been saying it all year. As soon as after we lost to you guys and we actually let Dak throw the ball, and not try to stick to this formula we've had since 2013 of run first, then pass later, with DeMarco Murray, then Zeke, and then Pollard. Let dude throw the ball, and because he's being allowed to throw the ball, sling the rock, that's why he's an MVP level season. Last year, again, we've talked about it. It's a fluke last year, coming off of an injury. He just did not have his best year. He was injury prone last year. He missed some games. He wasn't great. This year, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing.
And to continue on with Dak, another guy that has offensive player of the year implications. Now, I think if Tyreek Hill doesn't get it, they give it to Christian McCaffrey just based off of the stats continue. But number 3 has got to be CeeDee Lamb. The man has been absolutely incredible, except for one game, and it just is what it is. CeeDee has shown so much this year in terms of his growth and development, and has made a Michael Gallup contract extension look absolutely awful. But
yeah,
I think it just goes to show you that to operate at the highest levels, you have to have a supporting cast, and a lot of people want to dock Brock because he has an amazing supporting cast. But last time I checked, the last 10 NFL MVPs have had an amazing supporting cast. So, although I will say, I think the last time a quarterback won NFL MVP without throwing 40 touchdowns, which would probably be not happen this year, was like 2016 or 17. I should have looked this up before when Tom Brady won it. He didn't have 40. Lamar didn't have 40 passing touchdowns either, but I think he had like 9 rushing touchdowns, so he ended up with 46.
Yeah.
But just a true passer, it was Tom Brady in 2017. So,
and since we're on it, let's just get this. Let's get the topic out of the way. Since we're already talking about Dak, let's get him and his contract and why I'm so push and pull on his success. Obviously, when it comes to MVP, I'm push and pull on that one. I would love to see it just for the haters, just so he can get one. Obviously, Dak, when it comes to whatever you want to say about his play, whatever you want to say about the team, whatever you want to say about your grievances about Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboys, whatever it is, Dak is a good dude, and I think he is showing that he deserves it. Now, when it comes to the business side of it, I would love Dak not to win it because he is going to get a massive contract this offseason. Regardless, without it, he's going to be put back inside that top 3 of paid quarterbacks. If he wins MVP, he's resetting the market again. And he's going to end up making a boatload of money. Now, if I'm going to choose whether Dak gets paid a lot of money, wins MVP, or Dak gets a lot of money because we win the Super Bowl, I'm going to take the Super Bowl and Dak can get his money. If we win the Super Bowl, give Dak what he wants. If he wins MVP, he's going to get it, but I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, I guess if I would choose for him not to get the bag, still going to get the bag, but not reset the market and win MVP, or reset the market and win the Super Bowl, I'm going to choose that Super Bowl because I don't really care about the rest of it. As much as I love Dak.
Do you think the Cowboys could come to Levi's in January and beat the 49ers?
It depends on the man of the hour.
Like,
it depends on Dak at the end of the day.
So let me put it to you this way: if the Cowboys are in the Super Bowl this year, it means that they most likely beat. Maybe they got lucky and only had to play one of the two, but somebody's going to have to go through both of them. Hopefully, it's not us. If the Cowboys are in the Super Bowl this year, he's earned every penny, even if they don't win the Super Bowl, because
right,
everybody has a bad game, it's a team effort or whatever. But I think honestly, if you guys finish out the season strong and you lose in the NFC Championship game, or if you lose in the game before that, I think he's getting paid regardless. I think he's shown this year that he deserves it. Coming into this year, I did not think he did. And the first 5 or 6 games of this year where his ADOT was like 5 and, McCarthy wouldn't let him throw past the 4-yard line, I was like, what are we doing here? This is putting Cooper Rush. He balled out last year. But he's turned it around. He's proved himself. He's going to get paid. But I will tell you, your guys' owner, he knows a little bit about the TV rights and the TV deals and the money and the salary cap and all that stuff. And he's talked a big game this year about signing, how Dak deserves an extension, how they're going to sign him to an extension. He knows what's coming down the pipe. And, if the salary cap explodes by an extra $30 million, it doesn't matter if it's 12 or 14 over. What's he at, 45 or something right now?
He's at 40 flat.
45, okay. So, I mean, does he hit 60? Is that where we're at? What are we going to have to pay Brock Purdy if he wins the MVP? I'm going to pay Brock Purdy $200 million guaranteed. You know what I mean? So the next QB contract that comes up is going to be the biggest. It's just the way the NFL works. And so whether Dak wins MVP or the Super Bowl, I think he's getting paid.
Yeah, I don't think especially when it comes to the NFC conference, that championship game, we haven't been there. I have not actually witnessed the Cowboys be in the championship game. I call this very famously in our group chat, the divisional poverty franchise. And I will still stand by that until my own eyeballs can put it on the screen and it says NFC championship game and against whoever we're facing. I will be a happy fan if we go and we make that game. Just make it. Just make the game. I'll be happy. Dak can get paid. Sure. Obviously, Super Bowl is what I want. But if we make that game, I'm a lot more happy than if we lose in that divisional round. And I can't take another 49ers loss. I don't think my heart can take it. I might give out 25. I'm going to have a heart attack and give up right there.
Would you agree that if whoever makes it to the Super Bowl out of the NFC, it's a like they have to be the favorite? Like, are we that worried about the Ravens?
I would be. If it's Baltimore, then I would be. If it's anyone else coming out of the AFC, I'm not fretting on it just because of I think Lamar can put on a show and I think that he can prove it, but also he doesn't have the best track record in the playoffs. So he hasn't been in that situation. He hasn't been in that game. And I think the only other team I'm worried about is the Chiefs, and that comes down to Patrick Mahomes and him and Andy Reid just having the experience, being in that game, knowing what a win feels like, knowing what a loss feels like multiple times, for the wins. And that's the one I'm worried about because of experience, right? Dak doesn't know what it feels like to be in a Super Bowl. Brock doesn't know what it feels like to be in a Super Bowl. It's just a different atmosphere. It's a different game. It's a different intensity. Luckily, with the guys that you have on your team, there's a couple of them that know a thing or two about being in the Super Bowl. So you do have that level out a little bit, but it does come down a lot of the times to that quarterback play. Now, if your defense shows out because they know what it feels like to lose and they don't want to give that up again, then maybe whoever is on the AFC side is just a non-factor so much that Brock doesn't have to do much, the offense doesn't have to do much, and the defense just shuts it down so much it doesn't really matter. As as a 49ers fan, it comes down to a play. Someone being wide open down the field and Jimmy Garoppolo can't make the throw. It comes down to a throw. It comes down to a punt being muffed. It comes down to however many heartbreaks you want to count down for the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl losses that have come down the pipeline for the 49ers. It comes down to a play.
I think there's definitely an interesting conversation to be had by us later on one of these where we're talking about the impact on Mike McCarthy and Kyle Shanahan's legacy if they were to take another massive playoff loss. Frankly, when it comes to the Super Bowl, if the Niners are there, you can feed me the Chiefs, you can feed me the Ravens. We got our revenge on both of those teams coming. So obviously not this iteration of the 49ers team against the Ravens, but I still hate the Ravens. But the Chiefs, they've proven they can score 21 freaking points in 5 minutes and 24 seconds of game time in the Super Bowl. So they're always scary, but I'm honestly not too worried about the Chiefs. I don't think that Pacheco can run against us. He's a beast. I love him as a player. The 49ers run defense is vaulted. And I think the physicality which they bring against the Ravens. Honestly, if the 49ers go to the Super Bowl, I 1,000% expect them to win it. And I'm not the guy that rah-rahs my team. I'm always nervous. I'm always have huge anxiety for this. I don't know if we can beat the Cowboys again in the playoffs. I don't know if we can beat the Eagles again in the playoffs, especially at the link. But I know if we get it to the Super Bowl, we can beat the Ravens. So, to me, that's going to be like those fabled Lakers-Kings rivalries back in the day where the NBA Finals was earned in the Western Conference Finals, and everything after that was just 4 games to sweep the Sixers and be done with it. So
Now let's shift gears. Let's go back to the wide receivers. Let's talk about another incredible one. Another one that a lot of people can argue, future Hall of Famer Mike Evans reaching 1,000 yards once again. His performance in Tampa Bay's 21-18 win over the Panthers this past week recorded his 10th straight season, 10 straight seasons with 1,000 yards, and that's to start his career. So 10th season, another 1,000 yards. He hasn't known anything else lower than 1,000.
Not since his
Evans is
senior
now
year.
tied. Yep.
Senior year in high school.
Evans is now tied with Randy Moss for the second most 1,000 yard seasons all time, and only trails Jerry Rice for the record. Evans' 10 consecutive 1,000 yard campaigns are the second most in the league history. He is the first person in NFL history to begin his career with 10 straight 1,000 yard seasons. Rice set the record with 11 straight 1,000 yard receiving years. So very well can tie it next year. We'll see how that can be done. 1986 to 1996 is when that happened. And let's see. Now, and then Rice also has 14 years of at least 1,000 yards on top of that as well. And then Tim Brown is the only other one who is even close to that. And 150 yards is where he was short by this past Sunday. He ended up getting 162 yards on 7 catches. Evans' receiving yards totals represent 80% of the team's total receiving yards in the winning effort. If he maintains his pace, he'll roughly finish with 1,433 receiving yards, which would be the second best season of his career in that regard. And again, to put a little bit into perspective, 1,433 yards, while Tyreek Hill has more than that at this point in the season. Again, just more perspective. But we're talking about Mike Evans here. Another incredible run for him. I know when it came to, what was it, last year, he did it on like the final game, and he just like absolutely balled out and kind of barely got there. I think it was the year before that. It was another one he kind of barely got there. This year, no doubt in there. Did it in week 13, so there's no, oh, well, there's 17 weeks or 17 weeks or 17 weeks. A little bit different now. Kind of put it all away and does it with Baker Mayfield. Baker's balling a little bit, not as much as an older Tom Brady, but still getting the job done. And Mike Evans is showing out, and he could do it with anybody on the helm. Jameis Winston, Baker Mayfield, Tom Brady, whoever you want to put back there, Mike Evans is going to do it. Now, my question for you is obviously we know this is great. It's historic. It's awesome. Where does Mike Evans in the modern era? So let's put a cap on it. Let's say 2000 and onward. Where does Mike Evans, just give me ballpark, where does he rank all time? Because a lot of people would say Antonio Brown is top 3, top 2, top 1 in the modern era. He didn't play that long in comparison to Mike Evans, and the level of play that Mike Evans is playing at for the longevity. A lot of other guys are going to be up there, like Julio's going to be up there. Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill can be thrown in the conversation. Even if we're just talking about receivers, not even wide receivers, but receivers. Travis Kelce, Antonio Gates, tight ends can be thrown in the mix a little bit as well. But there's a lot of really good wide receivers. So top, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, modern era, 2000 onwards, where does Mike Evans sit for you?
Gosh, that's such a great question. So often when it comes to wide receiver stats, it's substance without anything to show for it. 58 yards a game gets you to 1,000 yards receiving. On its face, it's not super impressive. But what I would say to that is, how come no one else does it? I think my guy Brandon Ayuk is 60 yards away from 1,000, and that's going to be an accomplishment that the 49ers are going to celebrate this year because it doesn't happen. So to do it over and over and over and over. I think Mike Evans, Jameis, Tom Brady, Baker Mayfield, he got caught. And part of the reason why he struggled to hit 1,000 in those years is he got all the other weapons that were brought in with. and he still did it. And I think that when you look at just the consistency that he's brought to the field every year, he was highly touted out of A&M because of the Johnny Manziel thing. And he's lived up to the hype every year, year in and year out. I think he's, I'd have to go back and list them because I'm probably going to miss somebody. But, that upper echelon starts with, I guess he said 2000. So are we counting Terrell Owens, Julio, Calvin Johnson, those guys? But Mike Evans has got to be, if we sat here and made the list, which we won't do now, he's probably between 7th and 15th. And, if every NFL wide receiver today was up for grabs, there's Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans. It's he's easily in the league right now. So just in terms of production and everything that he's done, he's got a little bit of hardware to go with it. And to me, no doubt, just absolutely no doubt.
Yeah.
If he decided to retire after this year, every year that he stepped into the league, he had 1,000 yards receiving. Just to stay healthy, just to be able to, I've tried to make an argument this year with people about if Christian McCaffrey can make the Hall of Fame, and the years that he lost due to not being healthy, the statistics that he's lost, well, he's going to end up on rushing yards and all-purpose yards and everything, and how he's not going to end up as high as he may need to be to get to that Hall of Fame. The fact that Mike Evans has been able to stay healthy enough year in and year out, have his body prepared for the physical rigors of an NFL season to cash in on those 1,000 yards receiving every year, it's just an impressive display by him, and he deserves all the credit in the world. So, if you wanted to rank him as high as 6th to 7th, I wouldn't argue with you, except for the sport of the argument.
Right.
And I think what he does, the way he does it, is a value to every single team in the NFL. There's not every single team. Deebo Samuel is an MVP type level playmaker when utilized correctly. Not every team in the NFL can utilize Deebo Samuel. Every team in the NFL can plug Mike Evans in with 1,000 yards passing out of him, receiving, except for maybe the Steelers.
I think that the 1,000 yards is taken a little bit granted for Mike Evans specifically because he's been doing it for now 10 straight years. It's taken for granted now. Do you think that this is another topic of conversation? Yes, still Mike Evans, but a little bit off topic. Are we moving away from the big, tall-bodied wide receivers? I mean, if you just looking at last draft and the success of the wide receivers coming out of last draft, you have big-bodied wide receiver Quentin Johnston that we have number 1 on the board. Maybe he's not getting utilized, but he still has less than 180 yards on the season. I mean, it's abysmal. Then you have guys like Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers who are having immense success, and they're not the big-bodied wide receiver, right? They're the guys who they can play in your slot, but they can also be your X wide receiver. And without Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison is already getting that opportunity to prove that he can be the number 1. He's been incredibly impressive. And again, are we moving away from the big body type wide receiver like Julio, like Mike Evans? Are we moving away from that type of wide receiver?
I think we are. I think I did some quick little projections on the wide receiver class this year because I'm trying to figure out if the 49ers can afford Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel at the same time. And I think we got maybe one guy. I can't remember his name. I think he's out of. It's funny. I'll always remember the colleges. I think he's out of South Carolina. He's like 227 pounds. Everybody else is under 200, 205 or lower. I don't know exactly. I can't speak to why that is. Michael Pittman Jr. obviously is a huge target.
Yeah.
But I just think the physicality that these wide receivers are bringing nowadays makes up for maybe the height and the big bodied. The 49ers have a big wide receiver, Juwan Jennings, and he plays a tight end role. I think and the tight ends of the past are going away. I think
Yeah.
if you're a 6'4", 6'5", big bodied guy, I think that college programs are trying to teach how to block a little bit and play that tight end because it's
Yeah.
such a dual threat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that Mike Evans, I won't say he's the last of his kind because the way the NFL goes is it comes in waves. You know, they're going to go
Yeah.
to all these little 185-pound super fast blitzer guys, and then let me go get this big guy. And the Quentin Johnson thing, that's Kellen Moore's fault. So he's
Yeah.
he's
And I think it's players that shift that, right? It could be a player, it could be a couple of players that shift the wave. Um, it could be, I mean, if you look at the corners that are coming out, dude, that are long, physical, impressive receivers, sure, yeah, you can line up a big bodied dude against him, but he's long enough and tall enough to get up and do what he wants to do. So then now you're looking at people who need to be, it's quarterback and corners have the hardest job in the NFL. You have to be big, fast, long, and tall. You got to have every single intangible out there to make it. The only successful um, corner in the league who has I would say there's a certain, I can't remember it right now, but it's a certain arm length. And there's only one corner who's a successful, good corner in the league with this arm length that is under a certain amount. And it's Trent McDuffie. And that's why when he was coming out, I was not high on him because there was not a good, very, very good corner that produced at a high level with that minimal arm span. You look at all these guys that are coming out, we have Witherspoon and Sauce and Sertan, and these guys are, Diggs, and these guys are long, they're tall, they're fast, they're physical. They got to, and not only on top of that, they got to guard the best position on the field at all times, and they also have to be aware of everything else that's going on around them. I mean, it's you don't need the big bodies a lot of the time. You need guys who are a little bit in that in between, right? Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, the guy who are tweeners they're a little bit taller, but they're not big bodied. They're fast. They're shifty. They're more finesse than anything else.
well, some of your biggest bodied wide receivers in the league when you look at A.J. Brown and a DK Metcalf. Um, Now I know a certain team recently had a little bit of a struggle with DK, but the Tarvarius Ward is not that good of a thing. He effectively is
Yeah.
with technique and long limbs and playing the right positioning. Um, DK didn't do much with him. He's got him this week, so we'll see if he do better. AJ Brown, he had one slant that he took, but it was kind of a rub, a pick, offensive pass interference route. That happens in the NFL. But Jordan Addison, um, Mark Chase ate Tarvarius Ward up, and that's my dog. But
Mm-hmm.
those bigger body wide receivers, there's, there's not a lot of true toss that ball up contested one-on-one throws in the NFL anymore. You don't see a ton of that because the scheming is just so good and players come open so often.
Yeah.
You don't really need Mike Evans to just go deep and we're going to tuck it to him,
Yeah.
type of thing. But the NFL goes in waves. There's 10 years ago, Adrian Peterson was lining up 8 yards deep in the backfield and rushing forward like that. Now everybody's gone to the zone read concept that the 49ers run, and it'll go back to the the league catches up and then it shifts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the thing about it, what you're mentioning is, do you want to know why there's not enough elite offensive line talent in the NFL?
Why is that?
Because when these guys come out of high school and they're elite level athletes, they say, you know what? I want to sack the quarterback. So I'm going to be a pass rusher.
Yeah.
They could be offensive linemen, but they want to rush the passer. They want to hit.
Yeah.
So they play the defensive side of the ball, and that's where all that talent goes. That's why there's a lack of offensive line talent, because they go to the defense. There's
Yeah.
Jalen Carter and man, who's the kid they took the year before? The Eagles on the defensive line.
Jordan
Davis and Jalen Carter. And those guys wanted to be elite offensive tackles. They could be Trent Williams.
Yeah.
They could, but they want to rest the tackle. So they play that other side of the ball. I think it's the same thing with the corners. They're so long, they're so rangy. Maybe they don't want to be wide receiver. Maybe they're playing